Hey everybody, how's it going? Welcome to another Laravel live stream. Jimmy S. James starting us off. Let's migrate. Laralambos. Is that a website? That should be a website. It'll just have everybody with their Lambos,
Yeah.
aka Taylor.
Can get like a custom decal or something, like a custom paint job for your Lambo.
Ooh, that'd be fun. Cool. Welcome, everybody. Let us know where you're coming in from. Always love to see chat pop off. And I'm from Denver here in the U.S. Josh?
I am from Phoenix, so Arizona in the U.S. We're both, I guess you could call it West Coast. We're in the Mountain Time Zone, both of us.
Yeah. Welcome, everybody. Josh and I are on the DevRel team here at Laravel. All right, Manu, what's up from Canada? Richard from Kenya. Welcome.
Leon.
Cool. So today's stream, we've gotten a lot of questions about this, right, Josh? I think you've seen more of them than I have. What's up from Greece? Patricio from Brazil.
Mexico.
Fantastic.
Indonesia.
Cool. So while everybody's trickling in, if you could also hit the like and subscribe button, lets the YouTube algo, the all-knowing algo, kind of just help promote us and let more people know about Laravel. Jeff, what's up? What's up from Kosovo? Fantastic. Everybody around the world.
Yeah. So many. I love it.
Cool. So, today we're going to be talking about migrating from Laravel Forge to Laravel Cloud, something that we've gotten a lot of questions on, something that I've been wondering about my personal projects. So we thought, you know what? Let's take one of our personal projects and migrate it from Forge to Cloud.
Real time. No edits.
Yeah, no edits. So I think a lot of us will start to see exactly what that process looks like. I think sometimes people might like do this transition and say like, oh, it didn't work on the first deploy. This isn't for me.
Yeah.
I think as with any migration, there's like the steps you have to take. So we'll go through. I left Dev's buddy from Earth.
From Earth.
From Earth. Cool. So let's talk about what we'll be migrating today. This is a project that I have that is called Twin Pix. So Twin Pix is a dumb little AI game that I made for my in-laws, basically, at like the holidays. And basically it kind of blew up, got a ton of traffic. And right now, 36 real time, this is use Fathom up here. 15, let me drop into like the last, 365 days. So 2.4 million views. So it's getting good traffic, right? Let me go to the last 30 days.
It's not like any of my apps where I have like 10 users and stuff. So
I honestly wish it wasn't so popular because the AI image generation is like absolutely bankrupting me. So the way this game works is you get a daily image, kind of like a Wordle daily challenge game. You see this dog, the rainbow, and you get 100 characters to try to match that dog. So basically we'll say like, is that like a pug, cartoonish,
pug corgi mix?
Eyes, yeah, pug. Oh, wrong button.
Oh.
Mix. With big eyes, cosmic universe, rainbow vibes, very colorful. So we'll go ahead and create the image, and let me drop this in chat. Oh no, oops. I had to put a rate limit on it because too many people were playing. So let's remove the rate limit so all of you in chat can play, and then let's talk about migrating this app. So the way this is going to work, this is a project that Josh and I have worked on. Josh has access to the GitHub repo, and Josh is going to take this from Laravel Forge and put it on his Laravel Cloud account.
I like it. Let's like I
Please
said
don't
before,
bankrupt Chris.
Yeah, don't bankrupt Chris. As my boss, I kind of need him not bankrupt. That'd be great.
Let me go remove that limit. And to let you all know how this app works, it's a Laravel version 10 app. So a lot of people are saying, oh, does Laravel have to be on version 12 to be on Laravel Cloud? No, it does not. This is a Laravel V10 app. It's using Livewire, and pretty much everything you saw is one giant Volt component. It just is home.blade.php. And there are a couple actions to generate a new image, compare images, and that is, yeah, Crowley, put it on Taylor's tab. Yeah, so that's the setup.
But even though it's simple, there's still quite a bit of moving parts to this application, right? It's not just like hey, we're gonna host it and then we should be good to go. There's a database, there's a cache. You're using a cache.
Yep. There is storage. Right now, all the images are stored on Cloudflare R2. There is some rate limiting happening on the Laravel side, not on the networking Cloudflare side. The database is MySQL, so we're going to talk about how we can migrate the database. We've gotten a lot of questions about database migration. What does that look like moving to, let's say, serverless Postgres? Database migration is probably the biggest thing to have to worry about when you're moving things. Yeah. Cool. Yeah. So there's a couple questions already in chat. Let's see. Why does Cloud use R2 rather than S3? And Josh, I don't know if you can speak to this better than I can.
I might, just because it works better for our use case. That would be my answer. But what would your answer be?
Yeah. I think because a lot of our services, like our, I know AWS and Cloudflare, right? R2 is really unique in that, one, it has an S3 compatible API. So using Laravel drivers, you can kind of just switch between the two. Yep. But the cool thing about R2 is zero egress fees, which is really, really cool. And I think if you're wondering about oh, should I migrate my database, my storage, my cache is an interesting one, but we'll show you how you can kind of migrate your compute layer and keep your resources where they currently are. So you just link to your current database, link to your current storage. So I think there's tiers to this migration process.
Okay. Yeah. I think that's the process that usually most people are going to have to figure out or just kind of follow along with, is migration isn't just a one click, let's flip the switch and we're all automatically on cloud, right? It's okay, here we're going to take the steps of, first we're just going to get the site working, then we're going to get the database set up, then we're going to get the bucket set up, and then we're going to get the cache set up. I think having that tiered process that you kind of talked about before, of okay, there's a stair-stepping approach to make sure we get everything set up, and then we can flip the switch and turn on domains and everything like that. But yeah, like Chris said, this is a real app. It has real traffic, which means us doing this is completely live and unedited. So we're going to make sure we hopefully don't break everything in the process. But are you pushing that change, Chris, or do you want to make the change? Want me to make the change live, and then we'll push that?
No, I'm working on that change. So let's start.
I'll go ahead and start deploying.
Yeah. And I'll jump in when it's usable. Yeah.
Sweet. Awesome. Let me go ahead. And so I'm just going to jump into my cloud dashboard, since I already have this in my GitHub account. That's usually the first step. Within cloud, you can use a Git provider such as GitHub or GitLab. I'm going to be using GitHub that I already have connected to my cloud account. So I just have to click new application, and then I'm going to select the repository that I have. This is for private or public repositories, and I'm just going to go into Twin Pix. You can just kind of type into this repository section here. Okay, Twin Pix, that's the application. I'm going to select US East. It's the closest to me and probably the closest to most of our viewers. We are all from around the world here in today, but I think that's where it fits best for us. I'm going to click New Application, and we'll just kind of go ahead and get this up and running. So basically what this is doing is pulling that repo and setting it up to make it available for us to deploy from. And right here, we can already kind of like tell, okay, what are the things that we're going to need to migrate? And so, Chris, I think within Twin Pix, there is, we can go ahead and like edit this app size, for example. Maybe instead of flex 1 CPU, I'm going to bump this up to, I don't know, maybe 2 CPUs, 1 GB RAM. Seems pretty good.
Yeah, that seems good.
I'm not going to, maybe I'll turn on hibernation. Maybe I can turn on hibernation later. We're gonna bump that up a little bit, and this is where you can have your flexibility of what kind of scaling do you need to be able to say, okay, are we scaling this and setting a specific number of replicas, or are we just keeping it as one single replica? So I'm just going to click save here. And does Twin Pix use a scheduler, Chris?
Yes, it does use a scheduler because every day at the end of the day or at the beginning of the new day, it generates a brand new image.
Perfect.
So we'll need the scheduler. Yes.
Turn that on there. And then that should be it for that, which is nice. Okay, got the scheduler enabled. Let's go ahead and see. We can add I think we're going to need all 3 of these because we're going to need a database, we're going to need a cache, and we're going to need a bucket. So I'm going to create a new database cluster. I'm just going to call this Twin Pix. And so Laravel Cloud does have the option of Postgres, and MySQL is in developer preview. We're going to be kind of opening that up shortly in terms of having more and more people being able to create MySQL databases. But this is also a good test to say, okay, Twin Pix is on a MySQL database, so how can we export that to Postgres if that's something that you would want to do? So we're going to select Postgres here. We're going to create that database cluster. I'm just going to leave the cluster settings, and we should be good to go there. It's being created, and in a split second it should be created. I'm just going to click save. I'm going to add a cache. So I'm just going to add this in my cache I've already set up for my previous cloud accounts or cloud applications. And then I'm going to add a bucket.
So the question there is like, as far as if we're moving this application and we're a little scared to move the database, right?
Yeah.
What would be the step if like, oh, I want to move my compute, but I don't want to go database just yet?
It's a great question. I think for me personally, I think the best way, and that's where I think you don't have to move everything over to cloud right now. Even if you want to like keep your cache existing, that one's probably a little bit easier. Bucket, maybe bucket. Cache is probably the easiest, I would think, to migrate completely. Bucket probably the next easiest, and then database. And I would say if that's something where you're like, hey, I don't want to make this move all at once, but I still want to start the process, then you can just connect to your existing database within Laravel Cloud. For example, we have the ability, I'm going to save this real quick. We have the ability in our settings to be able to set specific environment variables. I just have an app key here, so it's not as leaking as much information. But we could set our database just like you would in a normal Laravel application, in Laravel Forge, and Laravel Vapor, and you're connecting to that from here. And as long as your application is in the same region, so if my database is in US East and I select my application US East, you shouldn't see too much of a difference than waiting to completely port over your database. What would you say to that, Chris? Like, what would your first thought be when you're like, hey, I want to do this over, but my hesitation is now I have to migrate everything. I have downtime of when a database goes from one to
absolutely.
the other.
I actually looked at like migrating this before, and I think the thing that I ended up doing was saying like, oh, let me just go grab my database environment variables from Forge and just drop them in right here. So what we could do first, I think, is let's try that. So if we go
Okay.
back to our main app environment overview,
Yep.
let's detach the database. And this is something cool
That's
that
great.
Laravel Cloud can do, is do the detach. And yeah, let's save that.
Database is still technically created because we created it as a resource, so we can just plop that back in whenever we need it.
Yes. And I think this leans into one of the questions from Tur here in chat. Can we create a database and cache across multiple environments and sites? Yes. The cool thing
Yep.
about what Josh just did, if you click Add Database again, is that it's not really just creating a database instance itself, it's creating a database cluster. So if you click on TwinPix, there's a main database in there. You can create a new database instance inside of that cluster. So you're sharing the cluster across multiple. So let's say you would have a main database for your main environment or your production environment. You could also have a staging database for your staging environment, all within like this TwinPix cluster.
Yeah. So technically, you could have all of your cloud apps on one database if you want, and just have different, or one database cluster if you want, and just have different databases within that cluster. Same thing with your cache, and cache is probably the one I would, at least personally, I would probably recommend of like that's probably easier to share,
Yes.
especially with the KV store that Laravel Cloud has set up. So this is one KV store cache cluster that I've set up for all of my cloud applications, and I can just use that. In fact, that's usually recommended for the most parts.
Yes.
Awesome. So yeah, we're not going to add a database. We can just connect the one that exists currently in Laravel Forge, right?
Yes. So let's find a way to go grab those environment variables. Actually, let's do this. Let's do a deploy. And
Okay.
what I have found is great for migration is just like add it to cloud, click deploy, and see what happens.
See what breaks.
See what breaks, and then just go
Sweet.
through and kind of like figure out, oh, it broke because it didn't have a database. Let's do that.
Yeah.
Oh, it broke because it didn't have storage. Let's do that.
It's great. Yeah, I'm even going to detach the cache. So all we have set up is technically our application, and if we look into our deployment settings, we have the few settings that come out of cloud, which is going to be the commands that most people need for 90% of their applications. Is the composer installs, npm run build, and then php artisan migrate. We don't have a database, so this is probably going to fail, but let's go ahead and deploy it.
What's interesting is that PHP Artisan Migrate got added because you added the database. It's not there by default.
Yep, that's a good point.
But then we removed the database, so the command stayed.
Yep, that is a good point. Yeah, it's there commented out by default, and when I added the database, it uncommented. So
Yes, yeah.
little red herring there.
So a couple questions. Learn with Faisal. Can we use local public disk driver in cloud? And Florian, thanks for hanging out. Florian's on the Laravel team.
Florian's making sure everything goes well.
Yeah. Local storage is ephemeral, so anything you say there will be gone after a redeploy. Yes, for anything persistent, use the resources like database storage, cache.
Yep, we can see here that it failed. We kind of expected that because of that PHP artisan migrate command. So our application was built, composer install. We can even see here all the build commands that kind of happened through that. But the deploy commands that are in our deploy script, it failed because we don't have a database. So why don't we connect it to our existing one then? We can grab the credentials from the Forge application and just plop them in. I'm gonna make sure not to do this on screen though.
Yeah, so let's see how far we can get without having to hide. So go and jump into Forge.
Sweet.
Light mode Forge. I haven't seen light mode Forge.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I use mostly light mode. Sorry for everyone who's gonna be
Yeah.
blinded right now.
Okay, cool. And then you're gonna jump into the environment. So let me hide the screen.
I'm
Cool.
going to jump into environment right now. In environment, I'm going to kind of explain everything that's happening so we don't dox ourselves and Chris really goes broke at that point.
Yeah.
But Forge shows you your database connection, DB host, DB port, DB database, username and password. And I'm just going to copy that. And what I'm going to do is I'm heading back into Laravel Cloud, and I'm just going to go into my settings and the custom environment variables. We can click reveal secrets, and I'm just going to paste those in and save. So on refresh, we're good to share the screen again, but basically I placed those in there. I clicked save. We still have to deploy to make sure that those environment settings are pushed to our application, but that should be enough. Let's go ahead and click deploy, see what happens.
Yep. And we've got a couple questions. One from Twitter X. Bradley, if I move stuff from Forge to cloud, I can ditch Envoy or write zero downtime deployments for cloud, and I won't need multi-server management for Envoy since cloud autoscales for me.
Correct.
Yes, both of those are correct. Yes, so zero downtime comes out of the box. You can see here that as we build, as we deploy, your application is still live. And then after your deployment is ready to go, it'll roll out. And what's interesting to note about how cloud handles it, if you go into settings real quick.
Yep.
If you scroll down, right, a little bit higher, under graceful shutdown timeout.
Oh, okay, that's what you're looking for. I was trying to follow
sorry,
you.
I should have said
No,
it.
you're
Yeah,
good, you're
so
good.
graceful shutdown timeout basically will say, oh, this is how long I want the old deployment to stick around to handle anything like queue jobs, any requests that are still lingering, and you can bump that up a little bit longer in case you have like queue jobs that take longer. This is perfect for our use case. And after the 30 seconds, that old deployment will drop out, and the new deployment will take on all of the new traffic.
Yeah, that's a great point there, Chris, that you mentioned of like usually that probably would be best for like queue jobs, right? Where you have maybe a long-standing queue job and you're like, hey, this thing, I still want to use old information because we don't want it to just break randomly in mid-switch, right? Would that be a good use case?
Yes, yeah, absolutely. And then follow up to that, Mr. Loco, will Envoyer eventually sunset? There are no plans to sunset Envoyer. Envoyer will live on, and it'll be a way to use it for zero downtime deployments for your servers. An interesting thing to note there is Forge is getting an update soon, and Forge will have built-in zero downtime deployments.
That's cool.
What's up, Mateus?
Okay, looks like we had another fail, so we'll see what happens here. Connection refused. Interesting.
All right, so another database problem, and just standard connection problems.
Yep. So connection refused. So it looks like this is similar. So maybe we didn't save our, because this one, yeah, same kind of.
Did you do a save and deploy in a?
I believe I had saved this.
How about you just bump the graceful shutdown timeout up one, and that'll force a new save?
There we go. Let's do that. Bump that to 30 seconds. Save. Perfect.
All right,
And
let's
we
try it
should be
again.
able to deploy
And yes,
round two.
Florian, I think that's where we're leading to. The database on Forge might not allow for connections from external services or a cloud instance, which is probably the use case for a lot of these connections.
Ones out of the box. Yeah.
Yeah. So is Cloud IP allowed to access our current? It's not an RDS cluster. It's built right onto the server, the Forge server. So maybe we do need to do some networking IP whitelisting there. But yeah, so I think that kind of is what you would have to do in that scenario. I think that lets us, in this stream at least, jump forward and just do the database migration.
Yeah, go full into it.
Just go full send on this at this point.
Go full send. Yeah. So I know that. Yeah, it looks like we failed again.
Okay.
Yeah, I think like with those connections, like that's obviously like a great option because then we could have the ability to connect to your existing database and not have to worry about that. But migration, especially if you are kind of just using this as a step-by-step process of migration, this could be something that isn't too terribly difficult. So let's go ahead and try it out. I'm going to add the database back again. We already had created this, so I'm just kind of reattaching to it and clicking save. And now I'm going to click deploy. So now that we have that deployed, actually, if you go ahead and thank you.
Hidden.
Thank you. I'm going to remove those environment variables that I previously did because I attached that database again, we're overwriting specific environment variables that Laravel Cloud is already pre-injecting for us with that database creation.
Yep. Okay. Yes. So a couple questions I saw in chat. CasBiz, what is the future of Forge? How is it connected to Laravel Cloud? I think Laravel is in a really unique position as far as providing hosting ways to host Laravel because Forge and Cloud exist. And I think if you offer one, there's going to be developers that want the other one. If you offer the other, there's going to be developers that want the other one. So I think the ability to say, like, look, Forge is a tool to help you manage your servers that you own, that you like put wherever you want, but we help you deploy on those. I don't think that's going to go away. That's not going to go away. Forge is getting a big upgrade coming soon. And Cloud, on the other side, right, fully managed, lets you not worry about auto scaling, lets you not worry about like spinning up new environments for, let's say, staging or a feature branch. I think both of those have a place, a very big place in the hosting world. So I think the future of Forge and Laravel Cloud is that they will live like side by side.
Yeah. I think it's nice that developers have options in that deployment space as well of like, and maybe that's even options within different projects too. Like maybe you have some projects that you'd like, maybe they're personal or for clients that you're like, hey, I don't want to manage it. Then maybe you have ones that are for your company that you're like, hey, we need to be in charge of this. We need to be able to have specific, server access and be in control of where those are hosted, what specific server provider. And that's where I think those options always come into play.
Yeah, cool. Let me bring
me back.
back.
We deployed and we have something successful.
Yes.
It's an empty database, but let's go ahead and see what happens if we click visit. We have 500 server error. Okay, so let's go ahead and think through what's happening here.
Yes, and something I like to do, if you go back into settings, let's go, there's nothing sensitive in environment anymore, I think, right?
Nope, nothing sensitive anymore.
Okay, so let's reveal secrets. And the cool thing about this is let's do an app debug true.
Ooh, okay.
In production, I know, I'm sorry, everybody.
I haven't technically shared the cloud URL, so no one can really access this yet.
Yeah, so if you zoom in here, just real quick before you save and deploy, what's cool about this is if you start adding environment variables that overwrite the injected variables that are down below, you'll see this warning, hey, like just make sure this is what you want to do because the injected the variable you're adding here will overwrite and take precedence over the injected variables.
Awesome. Let's go ahead, hit save and deploy. The true test, app debug in production.
Yes.
Hey, there's with Laravel Cloud, you have ways to run any command in production. You can run you can run database seeders in production if you want. Yep. You're not supposed to mostly, but you could.
There's if you want to show everybody how to do one-off commands real quick.
So in this command tab, we basically have the ability, we could technically remove this PHP artisan. This is a command for our specific server instance that we could run. So if we want to run, PHP artisan inspire and run that command, this is a one-time, oh, I can't run it while deployment's in process, but this is a one-time option to be able to say, hey, I want to run a single command, whether that's, migrate fresh, you could do in here with the seed. You can, anything that you have within your application's artisan namespace can be run here.
Yep. Let me run through, let's go to environment and let's go visit the app and see what's going on.
So we're broke now. Now that we have that, we have debug true, attempt to read property URL on null.
Got it. Okay, so basically that is happening because there are no...
There's nothing in the database.
There's nothing in the database. The first thing it's supposed to do is show a new challenge.
Okay.
Okay. I don't have a command to generate a new challenge, which I should. But I have a URL too, which is very not great.
Awesome. So what we could do here is then maybe show, I guess we could do one way of migrating. So I think there's a couple of different ways you could migrate your database. And it kind of depends on like how big your database is, how crazy the setup is, as well as, like what kind of stuff do you need? One of the things that I've done before is because Laravel Cloud gives you the ability to, in our environment, if I go into the actual database, I'm not going to click this while I'm on screen, but we have the ability to view credentials. I think it might actually hide some of them, but I'm not going to take that risk. Yep. Okay, sweet. We have this deep link to be able to say, I want to open this up in Table Plus, for example. And if you have Table Plus, that's great. If you have a different kind of
data grip
GUI, a database GUI that you can access that. Most database GUIs have the ability to like import from CSV into your database. So now you have the ability to connect to your database. And here we're connected to our database. We have all our tables that we migrated. I could technically just import, I think, what does the homepage need for this?
Challenges.
Okay. So I could technically, I already have a CSV. Go for it.
Oh, nice. Yeah, go for it.
I already have a CSV of, I believe I do. Let's see. Let's see. Maybe I don't. Thought I did.
Could you drop me the URL to it in private chat?
Yep. You want? Yeah. There we go.
Yeah. And then we'll share this with everybody as soon as we have one image in the database. Because there's a generate URL that I have. We'll generate it, and then it should be playable from here.
All right. It might not allow you to generate because we don't have the environment variable set up. But so while I'm stopping share my screen, let me connect those and do that. So basically now there's other environment variables to make this run. In this case,
Open AI keys.
Yep, AI keys and stuff like that. Things we really don't want to leak to you all. Not that we don't trust you.
While you're doing that, let me do some questions from chat.
Let's do it.
Let's see, dude. Florian, fantastic to have you in chat and answering these questions. Let's see. How can I use SQLite database if my storage is ephemeral? The main point of it is like, it's not really feasible. So yeah, you should probably look at MySQL, Postgres, or if you do want to use like an SQLite sort of scenario, maybe a service like, I don't know, Terso or something like that. But yeah, on SQLite database on cloud is not the thing to use. Let's see. This is a cool idea, Stockton. It would be great if Cloud could see my usage on my Forge and DigitalOcean droplet and suggest how much compute to use in Cloud. I think that's something that the team really wants to look into as far as like, oh, what size compute should I use? What level of auto scaling should I implement? What size database do I need? I think a lot of that right now is, hey, go look at the metrics, see if you're getting to some thresholds that you don't want to hit, and then scale from there. I think there's a lot to do with as far as like monitoring and visibility in your app on giving a little bit more smarter recommendations there. Let's see. Florian had a good answer as far as like regions. Rolling out more regions in the future for anybody that has that question about regions. There was a question about Tinker in prod. Right now, we have the ability to run the one-off commands. I would be interested to see like what sort of things you're doing using Tinker in production. As far as like, are you just analyzing your database? Are you like looking through how many records and maybe running some analytics? Yeah, let us know. Oh, I see. It says, Martin says to inspect models. Yeah, I think there's a couple different use cases there as far as like maybe using, does Tinkerwell go to prod? Or using a tool like maybe Table Plus or like DataGrip and getting that connection to the database directly and then running some SQL commands on that. I know it's not the benefit of like having Eloquent, but that's like an option. There's a question about like connecting to the database, to an external database. How do we whitelist cloud IPs? Florian, thanks again for being in chat. Florian said that the IP whitelist that is coming from cloud we'll be looking to publish that in the future. Yeah. Okay, Josh, how you doing?
Okay, so we deployed with those specific environment variables. So now that we have all of those set up, I think we still have an issue with generating from this. So what we're going to do is I'm going to show a way to, I think there's multiple ways that you could migrate a database. If you, for something like this, which is still a pretty large database, like we said, this is a real application. We could technically export everything. We can connect to our Forge database via Table Plus. We could just export everything as a CSV and import. That's not necessarily feasible if you have millions of rows. And so I'll show kind of like that, maybe like a table by table thing. And then we can try out PG Loader, which is basically a command line interface to migrate from a MySQL database into a Postgres database. So I have Table Plus already pulled up. This is the challenges database from the Twin Peaks production information. So what we're kind of doing here is saying, okay, if I export this as a CSV, it's from a MySQL database. I don't believe Twin Peaks itself has anything too crazy in terms of MySQL specific schemas, and that's something that you might have to think through. And one of the things that PG Loader is great for is it kind of takes the guesswork out of, okay, what is MySQL specific and what is Postgres specific? For this specific one, I don't think there's anything too much. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to connect back to my Postgres database in Laravel Cloud, and let's try an import of the challenges first, see if we can get something to work. So I'm going to go ahead and in my environment, I can just go ahead and select this, view credentials, deep link, and we're going to open this up. And I'm just going to import from a CSV. And so I have this. I want the challenges right there. Open that up, and we're going to import. Okay. So now looks like we have all of those imported. Let's go ahead and see if that breaks anything in Laravel Cloud. Let's go ahead and visit. Ah, there we go. We got something. We have something up and running. So we technically imported just the challenges itself. So we don't have everything else in the database. But this gets us at least a screen that we can have visible access to. We have that same little corgi dog. I don't think that if I was to try to describe this, it would work because of another issue that we can kind of talk through. But let me go ahead and say like
Are you getting OpenAI problems?
I think it's because of the non-sequential images. Actually, because we don't have any images pics
you just have
in the
the one.
database.
Yep.
Yeah, we probably should be fine. But we don't have a bucket. Half
Yes.
corgi dog, half, I don't even know what that is, like pug, dog in psychedelic, rainbow artwork. Let's just do that. Create image. Okay, too many players. People are.
I'm pretty sure that error is from OpenAI being like your API key is rate limited. So let me see what I can do here.
Yeah, I think it was when I took a look at it previously. I think it's like I think it might be the Azure one that's rate limiting.
Okay, let me look at that real quick, and
because we have logs in Laravel Cloud, we probably have, and it looks like it doesn't show that because it's not a specific log that we need to read. Okay, that being said, let's go ahead and then talk through PG Loader. So again, if you have I think like the total database size of TwinPix database is somewhere in like the, I don't know, 2 or 3 gigabytes. From what I remember correctly, it might be even less than that, which is not super large. But that might be similar to your application where you just have, like 10, 15 different tables. Maybe the CSV export and import is something that could be possible for you, or just enough to get you kind of like up and running kind of thing. Before we go to PG Loader, why don't we set up a cache and a bucket, and then we should be good to go from there. So in our environment, I'm just going to add a cache. I already had created this one within Laravel Cloud, so I'm just going to kind of attach that resource. Click Save. We're not going to deploy yet because I'm going to add the bucket. Now the bucket's cool. We can set up a bucket just right from this environment page. And the only thing I need to change here is I just want to make sure that this is public for my particular use case in TwinPix, because when a picture is generated using OpenAI, then we need it to be saved so that 1, we can display it to other users, but then 2, you also need to kind of send, I believe what TwinPix is doing is kind of sending it to OpenAI to rate how close are these 2 pictures together, the one that is already generated and the one that you generated. So we do need to be that public, but the cool thing is that's all we need to do for this bucket. I'm just going to create it, and we should be good to go from there. Just like with the database and the cache settings and everything like that. Looks like public is good. That's kind of like the default disk. We can change that if we want to, but I'm just going to click Add Bucket. It'll automatically import those variables for us. So we shouldn't have to do anything else. I'm just going to click Save and Deploy. Now, moving from MySQL to Postgres. I'm not a database expert, but when I was doing some tests to move MySQL to Postgres, one of the biggest things I learned is that if you kind of import, a bunch of different information from one MySQL database to one Postgres database, Postgres doesn't necessarily know what ID if you're going to insert something new, but you have 250 already in your database, it doesn't necessarily know to go to 251. Someone could correct me if I'm wrong on specific details of that, but there are ways to kind of tell Postgres to then reevaluate and go from there. And that would be done. One of the ways that could be done. I mean, there's ways to do it within Laravel, but one of the ways that could be done is through SQL commands by connecting to your database, for example. But the cool thing is PG loader. That's only if you kind of export via like CSV or an import via CSV. The cool thing is PG loader does all of that for you. So we'll go ahead and try to visit this again. See if we can get this to generate. Oh, let's see. Half corgi, half pug dog on psychedelic rainbow art. It is working its magic. No, got rate limit again.
Yeah, I'm working on something over here.
No, you're good. You're good. So
yeah, sorry everybody. I'm seeing an issue over here. I use Azure for my OpenAI setup, and Azure has somehow rate limited for the day. Like if you go to twinpix.ai,
there we go.
This always has to happen on stream. If you scroll down, you can see the number of players at the very top of that. You can see 1,600 people today. When I get up to those numbers, because usually I'll rate limit, and I turned off the rate limit for today for this stream, and Azure said, "Hey, that's a lot today, so let's stop you."
Yeah, you guys are great. Well, what is this one right here?
It gets a little wild at the bottom. So I over here and like frantically trying to change out the Azure requirement and just go straight to OpenAI for this stream. So that's what I have been quiet for like a minute.
No, yeah. You can never really have too much nice stuff on the internet. A lot of ways. I don't know what this stuff is starting to creep me out a little bit. Like, what is this? Yeah, I don't know if it was you guys who are listening to this stream, you need to look at this a little better and get better at describing something.
Yeah.
Or you're just trying to break the application and ruin Chris's life.
People definitely do that. Let's see. Let's go to some questions from chat. Let's see. There's a question here, and I'm interested to get like Florian's take too in chat. When will Laravel Cloud support a load balancer? Because that's the main stopper for us, is having the ability to do a global load balancer. Are you talking more about like a load balancer as far as routing to multiple applications based on region? Is that kind of the thought there? Or is load balancer more to just like distribute traffic when there's high load? Because if it's the latter, if it's about like, oh, there's too much traffic, we need a load balancer to serve between servers, Cloud has that built in its ability to auto-scale to multiple instances or multiple replicas in a cluster. Yeah, thanks, Josh. If you click on the app cluster itself, yes. So that right there, it's currently scaling from 2 to 6 replicas. I think that would kind of solve that problem. But if you're looking at maybe some sort of like what does AWS have? That router that AWS has to like go to different servers, then yeah. Oh yeah, Florian already answered on that one. Thanks, Florian. Yeah, so I guess there's just more clarification on that question. I see a lot of questions about like, can there be tools to like export databases from Forge, or like is there like a Forge to Cloud button? really appreciate all the feedback. I think the more feedback we can see from you all as far as like what you're looking for, definitely helps guide the team on what's important coming up.
Yep. So the biggest thing with PG Loader is you kind of need two different. So I'll kind of like walk through it, and then we can hide my screen. I can kind of go through a process to at least tell you what I'm doing behind the screen, because I don't want to leak any information. But PG Loader basically is just one simple command. You can add additional information and configuration options to your PG Loader, in the sense of, okay, maybe you're not wanting to create tables, or you're only wanting to migrate specific tables and maybe not bigger tables, or you want to do it in different like chunks or stuff like that. PG Loader is incredibly, I technically really dove into PG Loader yesterday, for example, and I learned so much just from this documentation. But for most people's needs, this simple command is all you might need. I'm going to add a couple of different options. One, to say that I don't want the actual migrations to happen because we already migrated our database. But then kind of talk it through two things that you'll need to think through if you're moving from Forge to cloud. One, we need this MySQL database name. Forge only allows you to connect to your database if you are SSH'd into the server. So what we can do is create an SSH tunnel, be able to connect to Forge through that SSH tunnel, and then say, okay, now I have my MySQL string. Thankfully, within our connection string within Laravel Cloud, we already have this PG string itself. So what I'm going to do behind the scenes is kind of just going to run this PG loader. I'm going to take the MySQL string, and then I'm going to grab the PG string. One thing to note for Forge is, if you go into your user settings, where is this? For SSL, what we can, not SSL, sorry. Where am I thinking of? Where am I thinking of, Chris, to be able to create a new user for our database? Oh, that's what it is in the actual database itself. Within the database, what we need to do is create a new user, and we can select which database that user has access to. And so within there, all we need to do is say, okay, now I have that database user. Now I can SSH into that particular database and use that MySQL connection string. So if we go ahead and hide my screen, then I can run this PG loader information.
Okay, cool. I got mine working. Absolutely terrible because I just didn't read docs, had one line wrong. So I will pass you a new API key for the environment variables while you have your screen hidden.
Awesome.
For cloud. And then, yeah, you keep doing what you're doing. I'm going to get to some chat messages. Thanks, everybody, for hanging out. Can't believe we're coming up on the hour mark. There are, let's see, some great questions coming into chat. Let's see. Yes, Postgres already has point-in-time recovery. MySQL will have it soon. And as far as your deployments, you can go back and redeploy any of your previous deployments.
Could you pass that through Slack as well, Chris?
Oh, yep.
Thank you.
Yeah, I want to call out some things that Florian said in chat. We do have some ideas about multi-region deployments, but there's still the open question about where you have your database. Yeah, if you have, let's say, like a load balancer or like a router that routes to different regions, they still have to all connect to some database in a region unless you have like some kind of serverless global deployment of a database. Yeah, maybe a database with multiple read replicas. I should just read Florian's things before I talk. But one write instance, TLDR, we want it. But yeah, technical challenges and just trying to figure out. Hey, Hank. We are close.
So the first thing I'm doing is I'm creating an SSH tunnel. So you're going to SSH into your Forge. I'm going to try to talk through what I'm doing without. No, not yet.
Okay.
Not yet. At least, I don't think so. I don't think we should.
Okay.
But first thing you're going to do is SSH into your Forge. Actually, this might be okay to show. The SSH key.
All right. If anything gets leaked, rotate keys fast.
Now we're just deleting everything. We're SSHing into our Forge database. And because I have my SSH key already set up as a separate user within the Forge database, what this is doing is creating a new tunnel for our SSH. So when I click this, we should be good to go. I need to enter my passphrase. Okay, I have debug.
That whole thing? That was long.
It is a full sentence.
Nice.
So now we have SSH tunnel already to go. Now what we're going to do is in a new tab, because we have that SSH, what we can do is create that PG loader thing. And I'm not going to actually share that so we can hide the screen again, but what we need to do is now use PG loader to do the MySQL connection string. That's going to be our username and password in that string, as well as the Postgres connection string that we would get from our Laravel cloud. So if you can go ahead and hide me again.
Yeah. And then there's a good question here. I'll take on that question while you're doing that. From YouTube from Usama. For apps that have custom Cloudflare rules, how can Cloud handle that? Can they use their Cloudflare, or is there a way to migrate? It just says Edge Network enabled right now. Yes, actually, if you go and add a domain right now, and we'll show this after this kind of section where we're migrating the database. If you go to your add a domain screen, you can add a domain, and then as soon as it gives you the instructions, it can give you two sets of instructions. One, if you want Laravel Cloud to handle all of that networking layer for you, or two, if you want to keep your Cloudflare Orange Cloud enabled, there's options there as well. So yes, you can keep your custom Cloudflare rules. You don't have to worry about any sort of double Cloudflare layer there. While you're working on that, Josh, did you already drop in the new OpenAI key into the environment?
I did, yes. I think I deployed. Yes, I did deploy.
Okay, cool. I think if you're good, I think I'll just share this with chat because we're coming up on time. I want them to all just be able to like play with this thing. Let me just test that it works. Dog that looks like a pug / corgi in a rainbow cosmic. Okay, not working for me.
All right.
All right, so Stephen from LinkedIn, how do I get an SSH key? We don't allow SSHing into your Laravel cloud environment right now. I think that with the kind of storage being ephemeral and being able to say like, oh, anything that happens in this deployment will kind of get recreated in a brand new deployment. I think the question is like, what are you looking to do when you SSH in, right? Josh, did you already add storage to this?
I did add storage, yes.
Okay, cool. All right. All right, hang in there, folks. We're close. I know we're up on the hour. Thanks, everybody, for hanging out. Thanks so much for the fantastic questions in chat. I think this has been great. Lots of good questions in chat. I think it's great that Florian, you've been here helping out, answering those questions. Everything that you ask us will go back to the team. Lots of good feedback here as far as like, oh, what should the team work on? What's important to you, everybody in the audience, all that good stuff. David asking a question about like some people have 20 sites on one server. What does it look like? It's not that easy to go from Forge to cloud. Forge is a different use case. Absolutely, right? Like if you want to have your 20 sites on one Forge server, I have a server with like 5 apps on it right now, then cool. That's fantastic. I think for me, it's been cool to see cloud and test it out for my personal things, because the things that I didn't realize cloud was going to be so important to do is spinning up multiple environments. Spinning up a feature branch or like a staging environment has been really helpful, especially if you can just deploy from a Git branch, right? To do that in Forge for all of those, like let's say 5 apps on a server, really tough to do, especially if you want to give each one its own like URL and maybe custom domain or something like that. So it depends on your use case. If you are doing an app that has a bunch of feature branches, do that on cloud. Let them hibernate so you're not incurring any costs while they're sleeping. All that good stuff. But yeah, all depends on your use case. I think what we've even seen on the Laravel team is we've been building a lot of these landing pages. The ability to have somebody just say, hey, here's a new branch, here's a URL to go check it out and provide feedback on it has been actually really nice. Let's see. All right, Josh, you're working on PG Loader?
I am working on PG Loader. One of the things that I would want to kind of point out that I think we're going to have documentation for is being able to have the ability to to PG Loader kind of expects a specific string, and so the connection string that you get through Laravel Cloud is going to be different than the one that PG Loader kind of expects, just a different kind of like format with how the username is put, how the specific key is put for where that information needs to go. And we're going to have some documentation now that both Chris and I have kind of dealt with this. I think we can talk through it a little bit more.
Cool. Yeah, can you jump into your cloud dashboard and see if that deployment worked?
Yep.
And then there's a good question from Akreyu on YouTube. Do jobs queues still run while in hibernation? No, they do not. When your application hibernates, all of the things on like your compute layer hibernate. And I think it brings up the question too, like if your main compute, if your app is hibernating, what are your jobs and queues working on, right? Like if your app is kind of hibernating. But yes, hibernating apps are activated by HTTP requests.
Okay, so it is scoring my corgi dog that I do. There we go.
Awesome. Okay, so that is live. Do you want to share the URL in chat? So we migrated the app. We haven't migrated the database yet, the full database, but
What we can do
it's
is
working.
I'm going to change. We can have our domain set to be able to change any of these Laravel.cloud domains. I'm just going to edit this into, we're just going to do twinpix.laravel.cloud. And someone already took that from us. So it's going to be twinpix
I think I did that.
stream. Oh, there you go. .laravel.cloud.
I think
So
you'll
we're
need
gonna
to deploy as well.
Save and deploy.
Yes. Jimmy's James, does the scheduler wake up the application? No. When the apps hibernates, the scheduler hibernates as well. Let's see. I get a lot of questions about hibernation and like what is working still, what wakes up the application. Like, do our worker clusters also hibernate? They do. Like the whole compute layer hibernates. Databases have their own set for hibernation for serverless Postgres, right? Let's see, what's the best way to have jobs working and hibernation working at the same time? Having two instances, one for HTTP, one for jobs. The whole compute layer sleeps, so like even if you have an app cluster and a worker cluster, all of that hibernates. And Florian, yeah. So I think the question there too is like, if you have a job that wants to work in the background but still have the main app hibernate, what is the job doing? Like if the overall app is sleeping, like I said earlier, like what does that look like if the app is sleeping but the queue is working, right? Like, let's see. All right, Josh.
Awesome. So we are live at twinpix-stream.laravel.cloud.
Let me drop that in chat. All right, can you do a test run, make sure it works? I think you already did, right?
I did one. Yeah. So we got this one beautiful corgi right here. Someone already created this one.
Nice.
It's our new database. We'll try a different one. We'll do a corgi and pug mix with big eyes and a neon rainbow sky with tons of colors like Rainbow Road. No.
Oh,
Too many
darn
players.
it. Okay. I got to figure out what that is. But somebody was able to generate below. Did you generate on this one?
I did generate on. Oh, it looks like we have two.
Cool.
So
Well,
someone did. Someone was able to.
we're going to wrap up in a second. Thanks, everybody, for hanging out. We have sort of the migration working. I think it's interesting because if you look
Hide
down
my
below.
screen again. Let me double check everything.
Yeah. I think Josh still has PG Loader kind of like working in the back. So let's say if you have any last minute questions, let us know. If you did like the stream and want us to do more of these, I think we really want to do like a Vapor to Cloud one, possibly this week, possibly next week. Not entirely sure yet, but to stay tuned for that, go to the YouTube channel, hit the subscribe button, get notified for any new streams we have going on. We definitely want to do more with the team themselves. We had an AMA with Joe Dixon, the engineering team lead for Laravel Cloud. Check that out on the channel. Let us know what you want to see. All of this feedback in chat has been fantastic. All of it will kind of like help the team figure out what you all want to see next. Let's see. Last minute questions. Throw them in there while you can. And again, thanks so much for hanging out with us. Fred, thank you so much.
As we can tell, usually the biggest part is going to be the database migration, and we're going to have some more documentation on like how to use PG Loader, for example, or what I have learned specifically through using PG Loader without having to migrate everything. But usually like the trickiest part with something like that is making sure it works with your specific database structure. So a lot of times you might have, you know, maybe specific columns in your MySQL database that you're transferring over to Postgres. If it's a Postgres to Postgres, that's a lot easier. You can kind of just dump and import from there. And even PG Loader itself, you don't necessarily have to use two connection strings, which is what I'm kind of doing here to show, okay, you can just kind of SSH tunnel and then connect and migrate from that. You can also just dump your complete MySQL database and use that as the kind of import connection for PG Loader as well.
Alexander on YouTube, just love cloud, transferred an entire API backend from Forge yesterday, connected VPS for Laravel Reverb. That's an awesome setup. I think a lot of questions about Reverb and like connecting to cloud or like will cloud have Reverb. That's something that the team really wants to look into in the future, like close future. I think Reverb is pretty close to all of our hearts here. Lots of good requests for that. So yeah, right now, doing it on a Forge VPS, awesome.
Okay, so if we can kind of take a look at my screen now again. So PG Loader worked. The one thing that I kind of had an issue with PG Loader, that there probably is some weird connection, or not weird connection, but weird configuration that I could use to not do this step. But the way that I found is easiest to work is after migrating. You can see here that we have all of our information from, and this is as up to date as possible from our previous, basically just like 5 minutes ago. It creates a new schema in our Postgres setting of twin picks. So what we would then have to do is say in our SQL, we would have to say, okay, we're going to drop the public database and then rename the schema from twin picks to public, because our Laravel application is expecting that public schema. What we could do is in our Laravel application, we could say, I want to use the twin picks schema as well. But for some reason, I could not get PG Loader to kind of like use that public schema. It kind of wanted to use what was the database name, if that makes sense. So I could run this SQL right now, but since people are on the site, I probably don't want to do that. But what I would do here is to drop the public database. Since this is probably not live in your particular application or use case, you could drop the public schema that we have, and instead then rename this twin pick schema, which is the migrated information for all of our picks generated, as well as everything else, challenges and stuff like that. And then have our Laravel application port to this schema instead.
Nice. Cool. Yeah, I think there's a lot to get through. Mine is working locally. Can you all check? I see Alexander got through with a 45%. I'm wondering if like the API key was the biggest problem. Yeah. David, I was at DigitalOcean for about 4 years. Yeah, at Laravel now, which is kind of like my dream job. Been doing Laravel for 12, 13 years now, since V3. Yeah. Cool. Thanks, everybody. I think this has been great. As you can see, like migrating an app from Forge to cloud, I think the steps in there are like, oh, there's about maybe 8 steps, right? But I think, as a lot of you know, any migration from any server to another server is always going to have stuff come up, right? So this API key thing was kind of like this weird thing today with rate limits on that. The database, PG Loader, is definitely probably going to be one of the biggest parts of the migration. But yeah, thanks everybody. Yeah. Josh, how do you feel?
Yeah, I think like kind of like what we mentioned. There's multiple ways to get to the end goal of like the easiest way is I could have just exported all of them as a CSV and import them. And for that, like even if I had a larger database, I'd probably be okay with that, because it might not be as smooth of a transition, but maybe that's okay if I'm doing it, for an hour in off hours or something like that.
Yeah.
But the PG loader is still, obviously you're going to, when it's running that migration, maybe you're going to have a couple minutes or I know some folks that I've seen in documentation for PG loader, a database of like 50 to 60 gigabytes is around 20 minutes to migrate. So you're still going to have that. So it kind of depends on like what's specific for your particular application. I feel great about just the options that you have. It's more of like, okay, maybe exporting and importing from a CSV is great for you and that works, or it's using PG loader. And like I said, I think we're gonna. I've learned a lot just from testing this to know like, okay, how do you actually set up PG loader? What's some setups that you did? It's, a lot of it's kind of like reconfiguring that connection string to what PG loader expects. Sometimes they expect like the URL and then in a different format and username over here and password over there.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think a lot of it is just kind of like what we did here on stream. Like none of this was meant to be, in a lot of ways, showing you a real-time use case of like, hey, there's a lot of things you have to think through, but in the end, it's just kind of learning as you go and also figuring out what's the best way for your particular application, like we learned.
Yeah. Yeah. No, so thanks. I appreciate everybody being here. Thanks so much. I think what I learned in this stream is that, like, obviously migrations, trying to get it done in 1 hour is kind of tough. I think 2 hours we would have been able to get it done, get the domain, get the storage. There were questions about like, hey, how do I move storage from like S3 to Laravel storage, which is backed by R2, which is still an S3 compatible API. That's something we want to do too. We would use like the S3 CLI and kind of do that migration. We didn't add a full domain, which we kind of wanted to show in the stream. We want to also talk about Vapor to cloud. There's a lot to do there. So again, if you want to have more of these streams, I think there's enough to do, like just migrating your database stream. I think that's large enough.
Yeah.
Yeah. Hit the subscribe button so you get notified on new streams. Thanks everybody for watching. Really appreciate you hanging out. And yeah, have a great rest of your day. See ya.